They were called Hollywood's perfect couples. The lights captured their kisses. The applause erased every doubt. But behind the locked doors were bottles, pills, and bruises hidden under bright makeup. They loved like they acted and kept acting until love itself became a scene that couldn't be cut. One broke apart under the camera's gaze. Another lost her mind beneath the sound of applause. Some died at the height of fame. Others kept living inside the ashes. These are the love stories that made Hollywood shine the brightest and rot the deepest. And the last couple on this list will make you realize not every light in Hollywood is made of love. Clark Gable and Carole Lombard, the love that died in flames. He was the king of Hollywood. She was its most luminous smile. When Clark Gable met Carole Lombard, the cameras didn't need direction. They simply watched two supernovas collide. Their laughter echoed through the backlots, through parties drenched in gin and cigarette haze. To the world, they were proof that beauty could be happy. But behind the press photographs lay something rougher. Gable drank to quiet the war inside him. Lombard drank to keep up. Arguments began like rehearsals and ended like scenes rewritten too many times. One night she hurled a glass. Another night he vanished for 3 days. They made up with gifts, jokes, and new headlines. Hollywood adored the glitter and ignored the fractures. He called her his tornado. She called him the stubborn king. Friends remembered evenings when she laughed too loudly at another man's joke. And Gable's eyes turned to stone. He wanted a woman who would orbit him. She wanted a partner who would stand beside her. In the still of their mansion in Encino, silence was often louder than applause. Then came January 16, 1942. Carole Lombard, returning from a war bond rally in Las Vegas, boarded TWA Flight 3. She kissed the letterhead written that morning, "Come home soon. M.A." At 7:20 p.m., the plane struck Potosi Mountain. No survivors. Among the ashes, rescuers found a silver compact and a charred photograph of Gable. When he arrived, still in uniform trousers and dust-covered boots, he walked through the wreckage until someone pulled him back. From that night, he stopped smiling for photographers. He enlisted in the Army Air Corps, flying combat missions as if hunting the same fire that had taken her. Reporters called it heroism. Friends called it penance. The legend says their love was the truest Hollywood ever produced. Those who knew him after said otherwise. The king who once ruled the screen sat alone in the dark, glass in hand, whispering her name into smoke. And if their love ended in fire, the next would show how fame itself can burn everything it touches. Ingrid Bergman and Roberto Rossellini, scandal that exiled a saint. She was Hollywood's angel pure, untouchable, framed by soft light and moral perfection. Ingrid Bergman built a career on decency. She was the woman men trusted, the saint audiences believed in. But saints aren't supposed to fall in love, especially not with married men. In 1949, on a windswept set in Italy, she met Roberto Rossellini, the fiery director of Rome, Open City. He called her the miracle I'd been waiting for. She was tired of pretending to be one. Letters turned into visits. Visits into nights that no studio contract could excuse. Soon, the world that once adored her began sharpening knives. When the affair became public, senators in Washington denounced her. Church leaders called her a moral threat. The American press branded her Hollywood's fallen Madonna. Even her studio dropped her name from posters. Pregnant, exiled, she hid in Rome, the city that had turned her from saint into scandal. Rossellini promised freedom. Instead, he offered control. He cast her in his films, directed her emotions, rewrote her image frame by frame. On set, He called her his creature. Offset. He monitored her calls, her letters, her clothes. She who once belonged to the world now belonged to one man. The marriage collapsed under its own myth. His jealousy turned to bitterness. Her love to guilt. When they finally separated, Ingrid returned to Hollywood older, thinner, forgiven by audiences who missed her face but never understood her silence. In an interview years later, she said softly, "I was the perfect woman on screen. I just wanted to be human." Those who knew her said the exile never truly ended. She carried it like perfume, faint but permanent. Her fall taught Hollywood a lesson it never forgot. The same lights that bless can also crucify. And if Ingrid's purity was burned by scandal, the next couple would prove that sometimes love itself is a courtroom, and nobody leaves unpunished. Errol Flynn and Lily Damita, the courtroom lovers. He was the golden rogue, the man every boy wanted to be, and every woman wanted to tame. Errol Flynn swashbuckled through Hollywood with a grin that sold both danger and charm. And then came Lily Damita, the French actress with a temper sharper than his sword. When they met in 1934, the sparks weren't romantic, they were electrical. Within months, they married in a rush of champagne and defiance. Their love began like a duel, glamorous, reckless, and destined to draw blood. He chased adventure, she chased him. Paparazzi caught their kisses on yachts, their fights on sidewalks. They broke plates as easily as they broke promises. Friends recalled parties where Lily would slap him in public, and he would bow theatrically in return, saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, my wife." But behind the performance, the damage grew. Flynn's nights blurred into morning's rum. Women. Scandal. Lily's fury became obsession. She hired detectives, followed him through hotel corridors, threatened divorce every other week. He called her the general. She called him the drunk. They weren't lovers anymore. They were opponents staging a war for the cameras. In 1940, the divorce arrived loud, brutal, expensive. Their courtroom became a theater. Lily accused him of cruelty and infidelity. He accused her of blackmail and madness. The press devoured every word. One headline read, "Captain Blood sinks in real life." By the end, their marriage was reduced to evidence, exhibits, photographs, telegrams, broken vows. Years later, when Flynn was tried for statutory rape, Lily appeared again, this time as his bitter ghost. She sold her story to tabloids, fueling the narrative of a man consumed by his own appetites. He called her name drunk at bars long after Shed left. She never forgave him, not even after his death at 50. Heartbroken and liver ruined. Theirs was not a love story, but a slow-motion crash, filmed in real time by every newspaper in America. And if Errol and Lily turned passion into war, the next pair would turn desire into destruction when love itself began to sound like jazz and heartbreak. Ava Gardner and Frank Sinatra, the affair that shattered a voice. She was called the world's most beautiful animal. He was the man who sang every heartbreak into history. When Ava Gardner met Frank Sinatra in 1949, it wasn't love at first sight, it was combustion. She was 26, wild and untamed. He was married, fading, desperate to matter again. The chemistry between them wasn't romance. It was voltage. They met in hotel rooms, on backlots, in the shadows of studio parties. She called him Francis. He called her baby. Their affair tore through Hollywood like a flamethrower. Gossip columns tracked every phone call, every night of shouting in the Beverly Hills Hotel. His wife Nancy filed for divorce. His career nearly died. Ava's fame only grew and so did the chaos. Sinatra's voice began to crack under pressure. He drank, gambled, begged her to marry him. She said yes, then ran. They fought in public, kissed in parking lots, made up with bruises still visible under her makeup. When we loved, she later said, we didn't make love, we made war. He followed her to Africa while she filmed Mogambo, calling her between takes, crying over long-distance lines. She found comfort in whiskey and silence. When he couldn't reach her, he'd call the studio, threatening to end it all. One night in 1953, he slit his wrist in despair. She flew home to save him, then left again. The marriage lasted only 6 years, but the aftershocks lasted a lifetime. When Sinatra recorded "I Am a Fool to Want You," people thought it was just another ballad. It wasn't. It was a confession. His voice broke on the high notes because the wound hadn't healed. Ava said later, "He never forgave me for leaving, and I never forgave him for making me stay too long." They both outlived their love, but neither escaped it. His records carried her name in silence. Her eyes carried his ghost. And if Ava and Frank burned each other alive, the next lovers would prove that even royalty can lose their minds, chasing the illusion of eternal love. Laurence Olivier and Vivien Leigh, madness in the spotlight. They were theater's royal couple, beauty and brilliance, perfectly rehearsed. Laurence Olivier, the disciplined master of words. Vivien Leigh, the woman whose face could silence a room. Together, they were supposed to be immortal. And for a while, they were. Their love was all light until the curtain fell. They met on stage, performing lines about love and death. The attraction was instant, consuming, and dangerous. Both were married. Both believed genius excused everything. Within months, they abandoned their spouses and built a world around each other, a palace made of spotlight and applause. But applause has a half-life. When it fades, the silence is unbearable. Vivien began to unravel. Her mood shifted like weather. Some days she was radiant, unstoppable. Others, she screamed at walls, vanished for hours. Olivier tried to manage her, to hide the chaos behind their perfect image. On stage, she trembled through a streetcar named Desire while he watched from the wings. Realizing the role wasn't a performance anymore, it was a diagnosis. He turned to other women, searching for calm. She turned to sleeping pills and rage. Their mansion in Notley Abbey echoed with arguments so fierce that servants quit without notice. He once told a friend, "Living with her is like living inside lightning." And still, he stayed until he couldn't. In 1960, he walked away, leaving her amid photographs and echoes. When asked if he missed her, he said, "Every day." But love is not enough when one heart keeps breaking. Years later, when Vivien died alone at 53, he wept uncontrollably at her funeral, whispering, "My darling girl, we had it all, didn't we?" Their love was theater in its purest form, magnificent, merciless, and meant to destroy its actors. And if Vivien and Laurence turned brilliance into madness, the next lovers would turn silence into devotion, a bond hidden for decades. Too sacred and too painful to speak aloud. Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, the silent devotion that hurt them both. He was the everyman of American cinema, flawed, human, unshakably real. She was Hollywood's untamed intellect, sharp, fearless, allergic to convention. When Spencer Tracy met Katharine Hepburn on the set of Woman of the Year in 1941, it was not thunder that struck, it was gravity. She once said, "He looked like death, but felt like home." Tracy was Catholic, married, and drowning in guilt. Hepburn, unmarried and curious about the edges of love, didn't care about rules. Their affair began quietly, then lasted 25 years, an invisible marriage that never existed on paper but lived in every glance. In public, they were colleagues. In private, they were each other's undoing. He drank to numb the conflict between faith and desire. She became his caretaker, hiding the bottles, steering him to bed when he stumbled through the door at dawn. In the mornings, shed open the windows, letting light in over the ashtrays and empty glasses. Friends said her love turned from passion to devotion, then to exhaustion. Hepburn gave up parts to stay near him. She built her schedule around his silence. "He needed me," she said once. And that was enough until it wasn't. He refused to divorce his wife, citing religion. She accepted it, convincing herself that love without recognition was somehow purer. In the final years, his health collapsed. She fed him, read to him, waited outside hospital rooms where she wasn't allowed to enter because she wasn't family. When he died in 1967, she wasn't invited to the funeral. She stayed home, sitting in the dark, whispering the prayer he never said aloud. Later, she reflected, "I loved him until the end. He never said it, but I knew." Their story wasn't about passion or scandal, it was about endurance, the kind that sanctifies and scars in equal measure. And if Spencer and Catherine turned silence into love, the next couple would prove that genius and beauty can't coexist without destroying each other first. Rita Hayworth and Orson Welles, the genius and the goddess who fell apart. She was the dream on every soldier's wall, the woman who made desire look holy. He was the man who redefined cinema, the boy genius who thought he could outwit love itself. When Rita Hayworth met Orson Welles in 1943, she thought Shed found the mind behind the mystery. He thought Head found beauty that could match his brilliance. For a brief, blinding moment, they were the most magnetic couple in Hollywood. But brilliance and beauty rarely coexist peacefully. He needed to control everything: the script, the lighting, the woman beside him. She just wanted to be loved, not directed. "He loved me as an idea," she told a friend, "not as a person." While she filmed Gilda, turning seduction into poetry, Wells vanished for weeks, chasing new projects, new muses, new excuses. She waited, red lipstick fading, wondering if the world's smartest man could ever learn tenderness. Their home in Beverly Hills became a battlefield of silence. Wells would retreat into his study, dictating scripts into a tape recorder. Rita would sit by the pool, staring into the water as if trying to see the reflection of the woman she used to be. He accused her of being shallow. She accused him of loving only himself. "I was just another one of his films," she said later, unfinished. When the marriage ended in 1947, he sent her a telegram, "I hope we can still be friends." She never replied. Years later, he admitted, "If this was a movie, I'd call it The Lady Who Got Away." Rita's beauty remained legendary, but she carried loneliness like perfume, invisible, heavy, inescapable. Wells went on creating masterpieces and self-destruction in equal measure. Neither remarried happily. They were the perfect Hollywood parable, a genius who could build worlds but not keep one woman, and a goddess who could make men dream but never make one stay. And if Rita and Orson turned love into art, the next couple would turn passion into violence when fame met the sharp edge of obsession. Lana Turner and Johnny Stompanato, the night that ended in blood. She was Hollywood's porcelain doll, soft voice, perfect curls, a face built for tragedy. He was a shadow from another world, a gangster who wore silk suits and carried a gun in every pocket. When Lana Turner met Johnny Stompanato in 1957, it looked like passion. In truth, it was a hostage situation dressed as love. He arrived with flowers and promises, the kind that wilt quickly. Within months, he controlled everything: her wardrobe, her friends, her phone calls. He followed her to film sets, waited outside dressing rooms, and shouted if she smiled at another man. She told friends he scared her, but also that she couldn't stop. "He made me feel alive," she said, and terrified. Their romance played out like a noir film: luxury, jealousy, bruises. On the set of Peyton Place, the crew learned to tell when Shed had one of his visits, her wrists covered by long sleeves, her smile trembling under studio light. MGM's publicity team called it a difficult phase. The truth was uglier. April 4th, 1958. Lana came home from rehearsal. Makeup still on. Heart already tired. Johnny was waiting. Neighbors later said the shouting sounded like glass breaking in slow motion. Upstairs, her 14-year-old daughter, Cheryl Crane, grabbed a kitchen knife, ran to the bedroom, and saw him hitting her mother. Minutes later, Johnny Stompanato lay bleeding on the carpet. The coroner called it self-defense. The tabloids called it Hollywood's darkest love story. Lana appeared at the inquest in a white suit and trembling hands, her voice breaking on every word. The jury believed her. The world didn't know what to believe. She kept working, but her eyes never smiled again the same way. "I lived," she said years later, "but something in me didn't." For Hollywood, it was another tragedy to frame in black and white beauty destroyed by the very thing it desired. And if Lana and Johnny proved that love can draw blood, the next couple would show that marriage itself can become a quiet, elegant war fought with words instead of knives. Gene Simmons and Stuart Granger, the marriage that became a war. They look like the perfect British couple exported to Hollywood: refined, beautiful, disciplined. Gene Simmons, delicate but steel beneath the surface. Stuart Granger, the dashing adventurer with a voice like polished brass. Together, they seemed untouchable, the civilized version of love in a town built on chaos. But civility, in Hollywood, rarely survives intimacy. They married in 1950, promising to never let fame come between them. Within a year, it did. Granger's career rose faster, his ego with it. Gene's success on Guys and Dolls and The Robe made her the studio's new obsession. And suddenly the spotlight that once belonged to him shifted quietly to her. He didn't forgive it. On set, he played the gentleman. At home, he became a critic. She was too quiet, too ambitious, too Americanized. Friends who visited their Beverly Hills house described dinners like interrogations, long silences broken only by the clinking of silverware and a voice correcting her tone. When she smiled at male co-stars, he accused her of infidelity. When she withdrew, he accused her of pride. It wasn't a marriage. One friend said, it was rehearsal for a tragedy. Gene found refuge in her work. She poured her heartbreak into every performance, while Granger filled the emptiness with anger and affairs. He once bragged publicly, "I am the man in this relationship." She simply replied, "Yes, you are." The calmness made it worse. He couldn't provoke her, and that infuriated him. In 1960, she filed for divorce, quietly, without spectacle. He didn't contest it, but he never forgave her success. Years later, he told an interviewer, "I married an angel and turned her into an actress." She replied in another magazine, "No." He married an actress and tried to turn her into a wife. Afterward, Jean built a career of quiet power, while Stewart faded into memory, forever shadowed by the woman who refused to break. Their love began as partnership and ended as competition, proof that, in Hollywood, even the most graceful wars leave ruins. And if Jean and Stewart fought with silence, the next couple would drag love through mud and scandal until nothing but infamy remained. Barbara Payton and Tom Neal, Hollywood's dirtiest love story. She had the face of an angel and the instincts of a gambler. Barbara Payton rose fast in 1,950 seconds, Hollywood blonde, reckless, too beautiful to survive the system. He was Tom Neal, a B-movie bruiser with fists that solved every argument. Together, they weren't lovers. They were an explosion disguised as a romance. They met in smoke and whiskey, a cocktail party in Beverly Hills, where Barbara was already engaged to actor French Hatton. Neal didn't care. He moved toward her with a confidence that smelled like danger. Within weeks, she was living with him, leaving Tone humiliated. The tabloids loved it. The blonde tornado and the bad boy boxer. One headline read, "What followed was less a love affair than a series of public disasters." They drank, fought, and made up violently. Neighbors heard shouting, breaking glass, then laughter. One night in 1951, Tom beat French Hatton nearly to death outside Barbara's apartment. His face was crushed. His career ended. Barbara stood over the blood-stained sidewalk in a fur coat, screaming his name. The next day, she told reporters, "Love makes people do crazy things." Hollywood blacklisted her. Studios tore up contracts. Neal went to jail. When he got out, they reunited not out of passion, but habit. Their home became a circus of police visits and liquor bottles. They were broke, infamous, and addicted to each other's destruction. By 1955, she was working in cheap bars, signing autographs on napkins for men who used to hang her posters. He worked as a gardener. Years later, she was found unconscious on a sidewalk in Los Angeles, penniless, drunk, 40. He would later murder his next wife. A reporter once asked Barbara if she regretted loving him. She smiled, teeth yellow, eyes still bright, and said, "No. He was the only man who ever hit me and meant it." Their story was Hollywood stripped of glamour, beauty devoured by violence. Love turned into addiction. And if Barbara and Tom showed how love could destroy reputations, the next couple would prove that even paradise isn't safe from loneliness. Tyrone Power and Linda Christian, the man who ran from love. He was the matinee idol, the man whose smile could sell both romance and redemption. She was called the Thean Beauty, a Mexican actress with eyes like liquid gold. When Tyrone Power met Linda Christian in Rome in 1948, had just come from another affair and another heartbreak. He was charming, weary, and already halfway gone. She was patient, the kind of woman who could wait for a man who never truly arrived. They married in a cathedral filled with flashbulbs and royalty. It looked like a fairy tale, but even fairy tales require belief. And Tyrone had lost his. He loved the idea of love, not its maintenance. On their honeymoon, he vanished to drink alone on their anniversaries. He stayed on set longer than necessary. He called her Angel, but his eyes were always searching the room for an exit. Linda wanted a home. He wanted escape. She decorated their Beverly Hills mansion with flowers. He filled it with silence. His absences became so constant that the staff referred to his returns as visits. When she confronted him about the other women, he smiled, kissed her forehead, and said, "I can't help being who I am." In 1951, during a fight that lasted hours, she threw his scripts into the fireplace. He watched them burn without a word. Soon after, he left not dramatically, just quietly, as if erasing himself from a photograph. She found out about his new lover through the newspapers. Hollywood, ever pragmatic, turned their heartbreak into gossip and moved on. Years later, she wrote, "He belonged to the sky more than to me." When Tyrone collapsed on a film set in Madrid in 1958, dying at 44, she flew to his funeral and placed a single white rose on his coffin. Linda remarried but never escaped the shadow of his absence. For decades, she referred to him in the present tense. Their story was a love that never quite touched the ground, beautiful, incomplete, always departing. And if Tyrone and Linda's love evaporated into distance, the next pair would show what happens when time itself becomes the most dangerous difference of all. Charlie Chaplin and Una Wanil, the genius who stole youth. He was 54, the world's most famous man without a voice. She was 17, the daughter of a playwright. A girl still deciding who she was. When Charlie Chaplin met Una Wanil in 1942, she came to audition for a role. Instead, she became the final act of his life. "She has an old soul," he told friends. What he didn't say was that it made him feel young again. The public called it scandal. He called it love. He wrote her letters filled with poetry and possessiveness, promises and apologies. She left her adolescence behind like an abandoned costume. At 19, she married him, traded parties for prams, freedom for fatherhood, his fatherhood. He was old enough to be her grandfather, but he believed love could erase arithmetic. For a time, it did. Their Swiss estate, Manoir des Bains, became a fortress of laughter, children, and carefully curated distance from the world that mocked them. But inside, control replaced charm. He directed everything when she spoke, what she wore, who she saw. "He loved me completely," she told a friend. "So completely that there was no space left for me." When America exiled Chaplin for alleged communist sympathies in 1952, Una followed without hesitation. She renounced her citizenship to stay by his side. It was loyalty of mythic proportions or submission disguised as devotion. As he aged, she became caretaker, secretary, nurse. He wrote scores, she fed him soup. His genius filled the house. Her silence filled the rest. After his death in 1977, she refused interviews, living in solitude surrounded by portraits of him. When asked why she never remarried, she said, "Because he never really left." Those who visited the manor said it smelled of old books and rosewater, the scent of youth preserved and forgotten. Their love was both miracle and captivity, the story of a man who couldn't bear time, and a girl who surrendered hers. And if Chaplin and Una blurred the line between love and possession, the next story would prove that even scandal can't erase a love the world refused to understand. Gloria Graham and Nicholas Ray, the scandal that Hollywood erased. She was the woman every film noir tried to imitate: lips too red, voice too soft, eyes that never told the truth twice. Gloria Graham didn't act seduction, she understood it. Nicholas Ray, her director on In a Lonely Place, understood her too well. He was brilliant, volatile, drawn to danger like a moth circling a cigarette flame. Together, they were doomed from the first close-up. When they met in 1948, she was married to someone else. So was he. Affairs were common in Hollywood, but theirs had the precision of a car crash, deliberate, inevitable, and spectacular. They married in 1948, But the honeymoon lasted barely longer than the headlines. She was flirtatious, unpredictable, almost allergic to fidelity. He was jealous, cruel, and obsessed with control. On set, he directed her like a sculptor, shaping his own reflection. Or too cold. He would shout, "I made you too cold." At home, it was worse. Arguments turned into disappearances. She locked herself in rooms. He slept on studio couches. He found solace in whiskey and accusations. She found solace in younger company, one in particular, his teenage son, Anthony. Years later, when the truth surfaced that Gloria had an affair with her stepson and eventually married him, Hollywood gasped, then erased her. Nicholas Ray left her long before the scandal broke, but he carried it like a scar. "I married my own screenplay," he told a friend. And it ended in censorship. Gloria's career disintegrated. Studios refused to hire her. She performed in small theaters, aging beautifully and invisibly. When she died of cancer in 1981, only a handful of people attended her funeral. Her stepson-turned-husband read a poem she had written years earlier, "Love is a quiet crime. We confess by living." Their story was too indecent even for Hollywood, a romance so twisted that the industry pretended it never happened. And if Gloria and Nicholas were buried by scandal, the next couple would prove that even the most admired man in Hollywood could love in silence and lose everything for it. Gary Cooper and Patricia Neal, the affair that broke her soul. He was the American ideal, tall, gentle, every inch the hero he played. She was the new face of post-war Hollywood, intelligent, unafraid. Barely 20. When Gary Cooper met Patricia Neal on the set of The Fountainhead in 1948, she thought she was acting opposite a legend. She didn't realize she was about to fall into a love story the world would never forgive. He was married, 25 years older, and already tired of being perfect. She was everything had: lost, youth, curiosity, danger. Their chemistry on screen bled into life. "I looked into his eyes," she said later, "and forgot my own name." The affair began quietly. Stolen afternoons, secret apartments, coded phone calls. Hollywood noticed. His wife, Veronica, noticed too. When the scandal reached the tabloids, Cooper retreated into guilt and whiskey. Patricia faced the full weight of moral outrage. He promised to leave his wife, then didn't. She became the villain in someone else's marriage. Letters arrived calling her homewrecker, sinner, curse. She endured it all for him until the phone stopped ringing. In 1950, she became pregnant. He asked her to end it. She did. The silence that followed changed her forever. "I died that year," she told a journalist decades later. The rest was survival. Cooper returned to his family, preaching reconciliation. Patricia left Hollywood for years, her career fractured by whispers that never faded. When Cooper was dying of cancer in 1961, he asked to see her. She came quietly, stood at the edge of his hospital bed, and touched his hand. He smiled the same shy, cinematic smile that once fooled the world and whispered, "Thank you." She wept, but said nothing. For the rest of her life, Patricia called him the Great Wound. Her performances after him carried that ache, a kind of calm sorrow that could not be acted, only remembered. Their love was not a scandal. It was an autopsy of two people who mistook pain for passion and silence for devotion. And if Gary and Patricia's affair closed this list in ashes, then maybe every story before it was just a rehearsal for the price of loving under the light. If these love stories shocked you, tell me which one left the deepest scar. They were idols, legends. Saints of the silver screen, but behind every kiss and every close-up were bruises. Betrayals. And the quiet sound of something breaking. Hollywood wrote their names in gold, yet love rewrote them in ashes. They searched for devotion in the spotlight and found loneliness in its glare. And maybe that's the truth no studio ever filmed. Fame can preserve beauty, but it cannot disinfect pain. Comment your thoughts below. Hit like and subscribe because the next story will open another door Hollywood tried to keep closed.